Indie games have the reputation for being literally the coolest thing ever. I don't think I've seen a genre of video game that brings out my autism quite like a good indie game. At a time where we were just getting so much AAA slop, indie games acted as this new alternative where passion ruled over profits and was a massive breath of fresh air for a lot of people. With the success of stuff like One Shot, Celeste, and that one game made by Toby Fox, the name is escaping me right now. It showed up-and-coming devs that you could be your own boss in the gaming industry and do it without living off pennies for the rest of your life. Now, in 2025, I'd go as far as to say that the best indie games are competing with the highest budget big studio hits. So, indie games are all sunshine and rainbows, right? Yeah, no. October 13th, 2023 marked the release of a game called The Coffin of Andy and Leyley. It was also the day everything went to hell. Murmurs arose regarding the game's depiction and glorification of incest. That wasn't a pause for dramatic effect, by the way. I just didn't want to get demonetized for having a bad word at the start of my video. A lot of the posts criticizing the game came from Twitter, but this did start to seep into the actual game's reviews on Steam. The people who enjoyed the game came out saying very normal things in order to defend the game's honor. Things would reach their boiling point when the creator of the game came out and made a statement regarding the absolute dumpster fire that was occurring, stating they had no intentions of toning down the story, along with this now infamous image. People didn't take that one well. During all of this, 4chan would end up doxing the creator of the game, forcing them to completely erase their online presence and hand over parts of the development to another studio under the name of Kit9. For the better part of a year, this game existed as merely a memory for me, and then I immediately forgot about it, and now we're here. I did try and watch a video about the game so I could make that YouTuber's opinion my own, but it was a video by Lily Orchard. Okay, so none of these discussions about the game really tell me what I need to know. So with no other choice, I bought the game. Yes, I can see the look on all of your faces right now, but believe me, explaining how this game was a business expense to my accountant was way worse. So let me see what this game's all about. The Coffin of Andy and Leyley starts with a flashback to an event we will find out about way later on. One of the two main characters wake up. This character is Ashley. She's awful. More on that later. Walking around the apartment, we already noticed how filthy everything is. There are dishes everywhere, bags of trash that have clearly been piling up for a while, and these weird brown stains. God, just looking at this makes me want to crash out. Before we really know what's going on, we do get some insight from the narrator when we interact with basically anything, really.
You get nothing! You lose!
Firstly, that all of the cabinets are completely empty, something the narrator is very much used to. Ashley is as well, seeing as she'd had to fill her stomach with water to trick her body into thinking that she was full multiple times. Ashley managed to find a can of tomatoes and shows it to the other main character and her brother, Andrew. The tone of the setting is really established once the warden is introduced. He doesn't really care about the fact that the siblings are dying of hunger, is fine lying about food arriving today, and then using that lie to threaten them into obedience. So characters are nonchalant in their cruelty, sure, but then there's a news broadcast which pretty clearly shows their disinterest with anyone's safety in the apartment complex the siblings are in. Oh, and also the fact that they threatened anyone who tries to check on their loved ones with being shot on sight.
Hey, I am here to deliver Uber Eats.
My favorite settings, the one where people are blatantly awful and nobody checks them. This happens later too, and it irked me there as well. Anyway, a neighbor begins playing this awful music.
From the screen to the ring to the pen to the king, where's my crown?
We get a little flashback to give people a little more context on why everything is so shit. A supposed water contamination happened at their apartment, forcing them to quarantine until everything was sorted, and they weren't a threat to anyone else. However, but neither of the siblings' parents drank any water and were therefore allowed to stay with the rest of society. Another thing worth noting is how Ashley's mother doesn't believe her when she says the staff aren't feeding her, calling it another one of her tall tales. After a while, she stopped responding to their calls in general. In one of the many parallels in the game, Andrew gets a phone call from someone. We don't get to hear their side, but it's pretty clear that whoever was on the phone was dumping Andrew. The next morning, their neighbor is back on the same shit again, and this time gets killed for it. Something interesting is that Andrew and Ashley care more about ransacking the guy's house for any spare food than whether he's actually okay. Ashley and Andrew come up with the idea to eat their dead neighbor to fix their hunger issue. I promise I'm gonna stop saying this, but more on that scene later. But the knowledge that the devil exists is actually a good bit of hope for the siblings. Let's not unpack that at all. They would now turn over a new leaf and dedicate their lives to Christianity. They try to recreate the summoning and not die. But before that could happen, the warden on their floor finds out their neighbor is dead, and they have to quickly clean up his room. A decently funny joke occurs here with Andrew and the warden trying to trade porn for a packet of noodles. That's the only thing worth mentioning for this scene. Eventually, the warden gets bored of this and catches Ashley in a closet she was hiding in. Before anyone could really ask questions, Andrew kills the warden. With this, more of the game opens up. We can now go down to the 3rd floor of the apartment and actually speak to another human being who has a full fridge of food? Turns out everyone on the 4th floor was just unlucky, I guess. Ashley baits another warden into being sacrificed, and Andrew murders the first person in the whole game that wasn't a complete degenerate. Before the two of them leave, an argument breaks out and gets pretty violent. They end up making up and going onwards to a lower tier of hell. More specifically, Detroit. Andrew and Ashley have managed to move into a hotel for the time being, and are attempting to keep a low profile since there's a chance they're straight up fugitives now. Ashley is still, well, she's still herself and doesn't fully get the severity of their situation. She leaves her gun lying around and is still threatening her brother with the fact that she could stop behaving at any time. A new report they watched that night claims their former house was burnt to a crisp, leaving absolutely no survivors, which is kind of good for them. Like, I don't know, personally, I would rather be confirmed to be dead than convicted as a cannibal. The main issue they have is that they're running out of money, and since they're no longer alive, they can't just stroll up to their bank and withdraw all of their money. So Ashley rubs together her last remaining brain cells and comes up with the plan to rob her parents. Incredible! Oh yeah, I lied by the way. This is their main issue. For whatever reason, someone wants the two siblings dead and has managed to track them to the motel all their stuff is in. You know, I just really don't know what would give anybody a reason to attack two innocent people. We got a glimpse into the good future where both of them die, but due to literal divine intervention, we're stuck with them for a little bit more. Remember that time Ashley did a do-it-yourself how to summon a demon successfully course? Yeah, that demon gave her a trinket that allows her to see the future. So now they know where he's hiding and can fish him out to avoid either of them. Okay, never mind. After I stopped throwing for content, Andrew and Ashley draw the killer out into the forest and murder him. Okay, Andrew murders him. Ashley was unironically playing a hide and seek while this was going on. So now we're back to the actual plot of this game. Andrew and Ashley steal their former assassin's car and head to their parents' new home. This journey is also halted by a vision Ashley has regarding her trinket and how she needs to use human souls to recharge it. The two arrive and break into their parents' house. But before anything happens, their mother arrives and is very shocked to see her two very dead children standing in front of her. Their dad also arrives, and now everyone needs to pretend that nothing is wrong despite everybody in this room knowing everything is wrong about what they're seeing. The parents literally had obituaries of their kids in the other room. Something interesting is that their mother tells them to sleep in separate rooms. This is something I'll talk about later on in the video, but we're almost done with the recap. After playing one of the worst segments of the entire game that basically forced me into spamming A on every single tile, Andrew and Ashley hold their parents at gunpoint for all of the money they have. Ashley sets up the ritual to take their parents' souls, and the two clean up the aftermath. Oh, sorry, there was an error in my script. They ate their parents' corpses. Arguably, they're in a better position than they were in episode 1. But there's still 5 minutes of gameplay left. So something else must happen, right? We aren't sure whether this is just a bad dream or another vision for Ashley. But Andrew attempts to kill her, and based on the choices you make, he either kills you or Ashley kills him. Either way, it leaves her pretty spooked when she wakes up. So yeah, that's it. While I managed to condense a playthrough of this game into, oh wow, 5 minutes, it doesn't really explain why I think this game is a mixed bag. When I finished playing the game, I was a little taken aback at how inoffensive some of the content really was. To be fair, I was walking into this expecting the absolute worst, so anything less would have been a step up. But then there are these weird decisions made that stop me from saying this game is all good as well. Before I verbally annihilate this game, and God, I need to make some friends. Before I talk about my issues of the game, I do want to talk about the things I liked, which is a lot surprisingly. The first thing I think any video game needs to do is have good music.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
If your thing is gonna be complete arse, you could at least be generous enough to not assault my ears with something that sounds like it came out of Sonic 4. And thankfully, the Coffin of Andy and Leyley is pleasant on the ears throughout the entire game. I'd go as far as to say that some of the tracks used are pretty memorable, and stuff I would like to use in my future videos. Okay, I never thought I'd have to say this, but considering the current landscape for video games, I am glad each episode felt like a finished product. I don't think any corners were cut in order to save time, and I would say episode 2 is a massive step up in terms of the game's quality. Writing is a different story, but we're not there yet. The gameplay is really well done as a kind of mix between an RPG and a visual novel. I feel like if it lacked either aspect, I would have been way more bored, since the game does have a very simple loop that is occasionally broken up by very good art. It's also paced really well. Nothing goes on for too long unless you're incompetent like I was multiple times while playing this game. Whenever I feel like something was beginning to feel repetitive, we'd suddenly have a drastic mix-up. I was also rewarded for paying attention to my surroundings. There's a bit where you need to get ingredients for this dish, and they don't tell you where they are. But if you're like me and spam A around the whole room, then you feel so smart that knowing the potatoes were in the back garden. And... that's all the positive things I have to say. Okay, time to tear this game apart. I think the overall setting for the game is kinda boring. Having Andrew and Ashley locked in a room that they can't leave is completely fine, but it's more how everyone else reacts to just about anything. A blatantly crummy road feels pretty played out despite how each year it seems to become more realistic. But having stuff like Toxisoda, a brand that admits it's selling you shit, or the news showing such obvious disregard towards everyone who supposedly died is just lame. In an attempt to highlight how corrupt this world is, it kind of fucks with my ability to take anything seriously. And I mean, does the game even want me to? I am ignoring some of the more atrocious dialogue I had to read while playing this game. The tone is all over the place. The cult that their neighbor was a part of are kinda just chill dudes. If this weren't a place where they were trying to summon demons, I'd say this was just a regular social club or something. One of you guys literally summoned a demon. Why are you not acting like this is a big deal? Speaking of big deals, the only reason why Andrew and Ashley even get away with eating their neighbors is because of the people who trapped them in there in the first place, deciding to go scorched earth on the entire project. But genuinely, why did they do this? The only reason I can think of is the media going crazy once they realized the living conditions everyone was forced to live in. But that doesn't really make sense. The media is in this shadow organization's pocket, as seen with how they reported about the residents of the apartments as being completely fine with nothing wrong going on. And even if there was, you'd get shot for checking anyway. So surely it's not worth the attention of burning down an entire apartment because of 2 people. Another reason reason I thought up was the fact that murders happened and a police investigation would be bad for them. But I must reiterate, they were allowed to shoot civilians on sight. This was reported in the media and everyone was fine with it. So like, surely the police are in on it. Either that or they're supremely incompetent, which is also not far off from real life. Normally I could ignore a lot of these problems. Suspension of disbelief, 9/11 didn't happen in Turning Red, you know, all that jazz. But these systems are not only brought up in the game, but some of the bigger reasons for characters acting the way they do is because of this. Episode 2 starts with Andrew commenting on how they need to keep a low profile in case the police recognize and arrest them. It would make no sense for whoever trapped them in the apartment to want people to think they're dead. Simply pointing out how they ate one of their neighbors would probably be enough to convince most people that anything that comes out of their mouth is crazy talk. This would only make sense if the writer wanted to give the characters a freebie for everything that happened in episode 1. It would be in the apartment's best interest to turn these two in as fugitives, but that would make the story the creator wants to tell a lot harder, so this is what we get instead. Characters doing really weird shit also extends to almost anyone who interacts with the siblings too. This was something I tried to fit into the next section, but it made more sense here. Andrew and Ashley's mother was completely right. She saw how codependent they were and tried to put a stop to it. She knew about their murders and still kept them around, and because of that, she suddenly had these terrible traits tacked onto her. For some reason, she doesn't believe Ashley when she complains about the food, and has no issue with the fact that her kids apparently died in a fucking fire like 2 days ago. I don't know if I ever have a kid, God forbid I ever have a kid, but if I did, hypothetically, I think my first question would be how either of them survived a building being set on fire and then collapsing on them. Mortality rates for that stuff is kinda low. I'm not even kidding. This is hardly addressed. We aren't told why they have these and why they're so nonchalant about their supposed dead kids popping up again. The only thing she says regarding these papers is that they're easy to fix, as if that was my remote concern right now. Is that supposed to imply that she knew they weren't dead? Surely she would call somebody if that was the case, right? I personally don't believe the writer thought about any of this and just wanted to throw some sort of shade towards the mother's way. This is kind of my main issue as a whole, because the game makes a point of how terrible these two are, but never really commits to making them all bad. And I think that's why a lot of people had an issue with. Okay, we are not calling a section now. The Coffin of Andy and Leyley has multiple routes you can take the characters on. One of them results in the characters sleeping with each other. This wasn't the ending I got in my gameplay because I'm not weird, so the footage you are now seeing is from another video on YouTube. This also means that my search history will forever be tainted with the term Andy and Leyley incest ending. So that's swell. Outside of just being grossed out by the concept, which is fair, people have an issue of the fact that this is just shock horror, so let's talk about that. Fundamentally, shock horror exists for the sole purpose of shocking you. So if you look at this ending from that angle, I guess it worked out. But if you've seen my other horror related videos, then I do not have the best relationship with shock horror. I'm not gonna say what series or what creator. We know I can't say that. So in Urban Spook, every kill documented would gradually up the ante more and more, but there wasn't really any reason why, other than the creator, who is called Urban Spook, it's very confusing, wanting to top how gross their killer could become. I think the biggest misunderstanding for a lot of people now is that shock horror can both be shocking and have substance. A good way shock horror is used is in something like Chainsaw Man. Spoilers for a lot of Chainsaw Man. The entire last arc is almost solely about making Denji's life worse than it already is. But each and every time, it's almost completely out of nowhere and also feels like the next logical step. Stuff like the snowball fight and the birthday cake surprise happen very quickly, and the manga moves on even faster from those events. But we know these characters. We've spent the last 80 chapters seeing them grow, so when they're taken away so fast, those emotions linger. They linger so so much that just seeing these characters in the next part of Chainsaw Man got me incredibly emotional. The reason Urban Spook and Andy and Leyley failed to get the same reaction out of me is because there is no build up to this sudden moment. It just happens, and instead of treating it like it's actually fucked up, they're making jokes out of it with this super upbeat music playing. The tone is completely off, which is even more confusing considering this game is aware of how terrible these two are.
Stop it! Stop it! Just stop! Let go! Let go! Get away from us! Let go!
At multiple points, the narrator calls out their behavior. Characters call out their behavior. So to me, that at least shows me that the writer is aware of how toxic these siblings are. So then why does no one take this seriously? Especially when the other route does. No, that question isn't rhetorical. I'm honestly very curious. Was this ending supposed to be a joke? I don't know. I should also now address the other thing this game is known for. I'm gonna be so for real, I didn't even want to talk about the glorification argument because it invites the worst type of people ever. So I want to keep this brief. I completely agree with the argument that this game handles the subject matter of incest hilariously poorly. That was what the whole last section was about. But I would like to give the creator the benefit of the doubt here. If the writing of the game will tell you anything about them, it's that they are a pretty edgy person. The type who wants to make a game about fucked up themes in a fucked up world, and while episode 1 was mostly successful, I think the wider scale of episode 2 is where they went too far. I don't blame people for thinking the creator glorified some pretty terrible stuff. They did not do themselves any favor with their public responses to everything. But with the wider context, I cannot say with full confidence that the creator's intention was to glorify incest. I think what they said was very dumb. I think they handled all of this incredibly poorly, but then I also see weird grifters who are actually into that kind of shit jump on this game and end up getting the creator doxxed. And that tiny, minute, microscopic piece of empathy I have does tend to flare up. I legit feel bad for this person, but I also think they did something pretty stupid that will be one of the only things that game is known for. And that sucks too, because I haven't even got to talk about my favorite part of the game. This video so far should have given you a very good reason to not like the game. It's tasteless, the creator is an idiot, and it has a terrible reputation. But if you did what I did and not pick the choices that deliberately make the siblings end up together, there's this golden nugget that makes writing off this game so hard. And that's the characters of Andrew and Ashley, the best part of the game that has been forever tainted by its creator. Andrew and Ashley are not good people. If my summary at the start of the video is anything to go by, I'd go as far as to say that they aren't even likable, even with the author making characters worse to compensate. It's something that really bugs me because I think the writer of this game struck gold with this idea. Two siblings who are in a constant war of giving and taking from one another in order to manipulate the other into doing what they want. That's compelling. I just wish it wasn't surrounded by all of this other shit. Andrew is a very insecure person. He gets upset about his lack of strength, about how other people view him, and his lack of connections with basically anyone. Unlike a certain other person, I feel confident in saying Andrew is a victim of circumstance. I just couldn't see someone with his problems doing some of the stuff he did. A lot of his behavior comes from this sick want to protect his sister from the trouble she gets herself into. There are times where he should have just left her to deal with her actions. Or, let's be real, for someone to murder her, and yeah, he doesn't. Why? We get a bit of insight into the way Andrew was raised. His parents left him alone because they were too busy with work. He had to look after himself at such a young age, and then his genius parents decided to have another kid that Andrew had to take care of. And she is the spawn of Satan. So unlikable that Andrew is the only person who could even put up with her, which creates another problem. In order to get along with Ashley, Andrew has become a massive doormat. Whenever she wants something, meaning he'll usually be against the idea and still find himself doing it. His first ever lines in the game is him telling Ashley that they need to ration, and him buckling to zero pressure. It's not just Ashley dragging Andrew into these schemes too. He is always the one who ends up dealing the major blow. Killing the warden, shooting their assassin, locking Nina in the chest. Andrew even lost his girlfriend because of his sister's obsession with him. Now we're back at the end of episode 2, and it's really not hard to imagine that Andrew would want to slit his sister's throat, is it? Speaking of that sister, Ashley is almost every horrible trait a person can have meshed into one person. Apathy to the suffering of others, verbally abusive, a stalker, physically abusive, manipulative, and she's messy. And she eats people too. I would like to say that Ashley is also a victim, but that just wouldn't be the case in any way. She is both conscious of all of the despicable shit she does and sleeps without a care in the world. At least Andrew is in constant turmoil over everything. Ashley almost gets a kick out of it. Actually, not almost. In the same way that Andrew's main priority is his sister, Ashley's main priority is ruining every single one of Andrew's relationships. I already mentioned this, but Ashley harassed Andrew's girlfriend so badly that she had to break up with him. Andrew merely speaks to their neighbor downstairs and she immediately starts thinking of ways she can kill her. She blames her mother for the two being trapped in the apartment for 6 months, so she has no qualms about sacrificing her to a real-life demon and then eating her. That scene does give more insight into her character, however. When eating her mother's remains, she comments on how much power it makes her feel. That hunger for power, and control is what dictates every single one of Ashley's actions. In episode 1 of Abusing My Older Brother Simulator, her choosing to eat her neighbor is already pretty bad. What makes it so much worse is her convincing her brother to aid her in doing so, but that the idea she brought up was actually his the whole time, saying she was just making an observation, before pressuring Andrew into cannibalism too. She always feels this need to remind Andrew of who's really in control, or how she does everything in their home that is a complete mess. It isn't enough to treat these people with callous disregard. She just has to make her brother an accomplice. Make sure that he's just as bad as her so that Andrew can never move beyond this toxic relationship. The dude had a life. He had friends at school, he was going to college, and was given a job opportunity by his mother in episode 2. Ashley seems to like any basic life skills like cooking or not being a total nightmare in social situations, and I think it really bothers her. She wants control, but lacks any of the traits that would allow her to gain it. Her obsession with Andrew comes from the fact that he is probably the only one who could fulfill her power fantasies. So when she felt like he was slipping away, she had to do something pretty severe to bring him back. An event I've been alluding to is the death of this person whose name is redacted throughout most of the game. This character is called Nina, and she had a crush on Andrew. Ashley gets jealous and wants to teach her a lesson for ever trying to take away her property. She convinces Andrew into bringing her to this abandoned sawdust warehouse. The entire time the three are there, Ashley is getting more and more agitated by Nina's presence. When Andrew responds that she is just fine, she flips out and locks Nina in a chest while playing a game of hide and seek. See, Nina is asthmatic, so this environment isn't the best for her lungs, and she makes that known to both siblings. Andrew tries to let her out, but Ashley completely breaks down, crying to Andrew about how everyone likes Nina better, how Andrew would rather have a girlfriend instead of hanging out with her. She calls out Andrew for only hanging out with her because their mum told him to do it, and how she's loud, annoying, and unlikable. I mean, she's not wrong. The real reason for this breakdown is revealed. All of that crying and self-pitying was to make Andrew feel bad for her. She never let Andrew get a word in unless it was exactly what she wanted to hear, and the second it was, all of those tears disappear. Even Andrew sees through this, so she just starts crying again until he finally aids her in locking Nina in that chest. Nina obviously died after being locked in the chest for a whole night. The siblings bury the body, and Ashley takes full advantage of their situation. They just killed their classmate. If they were caught, they'd be in prison for years, and Ashley leverages this to force Andrew to obey her every command. friend, calling him a bad person who will never be liked again. She is fine with the two of them being ostracized by their peers because then Andrew will never leave her. This flashback ends with the current Ashley trying to convince a sleeping Andrew to kill their parents. Kill them to avoid the things I'll do to you if I don't is an insane thing to say to anyone, especially your brother. And she knows this, as when Andrew questions her on this, she changes the subject and never addresses it. After Nina's death, Ashley assumed she would get her way each and every time with Andy, but Andrew has denied her this right so many times. Andrew doesn't listen, Andrew dates other girls, Andrew has a life and she hates him for it. They get into another argument. As usual, Ashley threatens to game end herself if Andrew doesn't listen to her. Do it! She blames Nina's death on him and starts attacking him, but Andrew has had enough. He says right here and now that he can kill her. Fuck any promises they made or the comfort she brings him. If she doesn't calm down right now, that's it. You can tell this is the first time she truly realized she doesn't have as much control as she thought. And despite that, she still gets her way every single time. God, I hate her. Ashley is so goddamn annoying to see on screen because she should get fucking bodied but never does. She is a perfect hateable character. So why are people obsessed with her? I have listed all of the things I both liked and loathed about this game, but I couldn't say the video was complete without talking about this game's audience. Are they real? I'm not even talking about the gooners for Ashley. You can put Hitler in a show and people will defend him if they're attractive enough. Oh god, people do it even if they aren't. I'm more talking about the people who were there when episode 2 first dropped. Like, genuine question to everyone watching. Have any of you played the game? Nearly every post about this game is just wrong. Either that or just strange. The two most vocal parts of the people who care about this game seem to be people rightfully upset at bad depictions of a serious event and people hopping on a grift because someone attacked their weird fetish. It feels like the discussion of this game entered into this culture war bullshit that I hate so much with any media. Half of the Kumas defending this game haven't even played it and have no clue what they're talking about. But then on the other hand, the people going against them aren't having the game. But then on the other hand, the people going against them also haven't played the game and just reference other popular tweets made about it. It's corny. I just wanted to call this game mid, but I just know some random dude is gonna use my video to either say this game is the best thing ever or the worst. It's just so dumb. If I can be as honest as possible, this game is just mid, but somehow generated this big controversy that led to the creator being doxxed. Like, why? When is it ever that deep, dude? The Coffin of Andy and Leyley sure was a thing I played for 4 hours. It has its good parts and it has a lot of bad. If you ignore the backlash this game got, it's not even that interesting of a topic. So there. Thanks for watching the video. After taking the entire month off in January for no reason in particular, I'm feeling way more refreshed and ready to make some gronk content. Speaking of, if you want more content from me, then check out my Patreon. And speaking of, these guys saw this video way early too, so there's that, I guess. I hope you all have a wonderful day. See you, lads.